In this video, we are going to focus on how to graph sine and cosine translations. To start off, we must know the basic functions for both. A represents the amplitude, B represents the period, H represents the horizontal shift, and K represents the vertical shift. Keep in mind that in sine, it starts at the midline. For cosine, it represents the same thing. The only difference is it starts at the maximum point that is given. Going back to the sine function, we will start with the translation. It's pretty easy to identify the amplitude, the period, and the vertical shift. As you can tell here, 2 will represent the amplitude, so we would put that here. The period, you still use the same equation, 2 pi over b. And since b is 1 here, the period will continue to be 2 pi. And for the vertical shift right here, that would mean that the whole midline will go up 1. So to graph this, we will start with putting up the midline at 1. Then we will check the amplitude, meaning it starts at 2. So that would be the highest it would go, starting at 1. So right here would be the first point. We will go up to 1, 2. Then we will go back down to 1, 2. Meaning you go back to the midline. You go down to 1, 2. And then go back up 2, 1, 2. And this would be a translation for sine. Going back to the cosine function, we will start with a translation here. To make things easier, we're going to graph the original function. As it was shown previously, you will start at 1 because that was its midpoint. You will go back down and you will continue its cycle. This would be its original cycle with no translation. But in this case, you could tell there is an amplitude, a period, and a horizontal shift. Like I said previously, the amplitude is always in front of cosine or sine. So the amplitude here would be 2. The period, to find the period, it would be 2 pi over b. 2 pi over b. This case, b would be 1, so it would be 2 pi over 1 equals 2 pi. So the period will still continue to be 2 pi right here. And for the horizontal shift, that would be here, pi over 4. But with this sign, we always have to keep in mind we do the opposite of what it says. So if it says minus pi over 4, that means while graphing it, we would go to the right pi over 4. Pi over 4. So to graph this, we would start at its midline, which would be at 2. If this is 1, this is where we're starting, 2. Then we're gonna move pi over 4. So if it's pi 2, pi over 4 should be right next to it. And you would just move the points right over. So if it's here, you just move it aside. And you continue the same thing. And it should end a little ahead over here. And that would be your completed cycle with the translations. As you can see, there's a difference. The green would be the original with no translations, and the orange would be the translations above.